Now to Chapter 12 in Kostenberger, Merkel, and Plummer. A number of important ideas here, various parts of speech, all comprised here in Chapter 12. Pronouns that we'll look at here in Module 8, Module 9, prepositions, prepositional phrases, Module 10, adverbs and particles. Chapter 12 is robust in terms of the exegetical and homiletical weight that this chapter carries. Small words, but a disproportionate shadow they cast. These words are important. You will see in just the pronouns here in Module 8 for Christology, for Christian ethics and Christian living. Prepositional phrases that we'll see in Module 9, so important in qualifying verbal and noun ideas, and then to particles and how sentences and ideas are connected together, and adverbs. So much here. So Chapter 12 we're breaking into 3 modules. Here in Module 8, just pronouns. Let's pray together and we'll begin to survey the pronouns of Intermediate Greek. Lord, strengthen us. I pray that you will help students to clarify the way that you have used pronouns to communicate about yourself and about Christ, especially in Colossians, and how we are to live in light of what you have arranged in your word and how you have communicated. Help us to speak it clearly, and that because you have impacted our lives fully. We ask this in your Son's name. Amen. Pronouns, remember, represent a noun. They stand in for a noun, and as such, they have an antecedent. They have to match in number and gender with that antecedent, singular, plural, masculine, feminine, neuter, and they stand for a noun, and the way that an author places the pronoun in a particular case requires us to classify that noun case, even of the pronoun. So we'll see, especially with the dative and genitive here, we'll have an opportunity to go back and to do some review of noun cases. I want to think with you about the arrangement of this table. And generally speaking, it doesn't apply for every cell here in this table, but from personal pronouns down to indefinite pronouns, we have a degree of greater proximity or subjectivity to greater objectivity or lesser degree of proximity. That is, a personal pronoun is a greater proximity of relationship than just someone or anyone, an indefinite pronoun. That's one way to just think about this table. Reflexive is very proximal, so it breaks down at that point, and reciprocal. But from personal down to indefinite, that's one way to help you organize your thoughts here. Let's think about these pronouns then. Personal pronouns, first person ego, second person su, third person autos. And remember, autos, the way that autos is used here and there can flex. It can be a personal pronoun, third person, and again, masculine, feminine, or neuter. It can also, remember, have an adjectival function. It can be an intensive pronoun. In the predicate position, no article with the intensive pronoun, and in that predicate position, the repetitive pronoun, meaning the same or identical adjective, it's sometimes called. And here it often has the article, meaning the same one, the same person, the same thing. The intensive adjective, intensifying that noun, it's not necessary, so we translate it with the idea of self, himself, herself, itself, or can have the translation of very. We'll see that in Colossians here. So the personal pronoun, first, second, and third person. The demonstrative pronoun. You recall these, this is the cooking show pronoun. This one, this item, this ingredient, that ingredient, those ingredients. Hutos and akanos. This one, these, that one, and those. I list here the Gospel of John and 1 John beside the demonstrative. We'll see in a moment in accordance. John uses the demonstrative frequently, and he uses it often for Jesus, for people. And that's a bit strange to us, but John already, the latest author of the New Testament authors perhaps, already in his day there are multiple Christologies developing, and he's seeking to objectify, and we have this cline here from greater subjectivity to greater objectivity, from the personal to the demonstrative. He's already seeking to make this sort of a demonstrative, a cooking show kind of affair with Christian doctrine and Christology. He's separating himself in a sense, even though he's the most personal disciple. He's the disciple Jesus loved. He's already seeking to objectify this message. The relative pronoun, who, whom, which, and it relating ideas together. The interrogative pronoun, separated from the indefinite just by the acute accent mark, and we'll also have that semicolon in NA28. Remember, that's not there in the manuscripts that we get NA28 from, but that will help us to know that a question is involved. The reflexive pronoun, reciprocal pronoun, I'll let you look at those. We'll see here in just a moment the indefinite pronoun, important for us to think about in Colossians, and we'll look at that in just a few moments. Note with me here, I want to look next at accordance actually. Note with me here in accordance. Here I've pulled up the pronouns throughout the New Testament, and specifically the demonstrative pronoun. So that's what we have here in our view of the graph, and you can see just up and down use as we might expect with any one part of speech. It's used more or less here or there, but notice as we progress here through the Gospels and now into Luke, generally toward the latter part of the Gospels. And it may be that it's Luke, as we saw with Matthew a moment ago, and Mark there just as we scanned through. As we get to the latter portion of the Gospels, there's a greater degree of explanation taking place, and that's what the demonstrative does. But when we get to John, notice how much more frequently John uses. Still up and down, but the greater quantity is here. And as we progress through Acts, again, some, but we get to the epistles, less. Generally speaking, a spike here or there, but the quantitative comparison is much less than the Gospels. But then we get, notice, to 1 John, there's a bulk again of them. And John frequently uses that demonstrative pronoun to speak about Jesus or another figure, but especially about Jesus, and uses the relative to do that same thing. So keep in mind how he is using the demonstrative. Let's look for a moment at our open book exercise for Module 8 here. I want to look at several of these with you. I think you have around 25 or so that you're going to do here. Each of them will be worth 4 points for 100 points possible in the Module 8 open book exercise. And a reminder, as you're progressing here, be working on your full exegesis of Colossians so that you can complete that just as fully as possible by the end of the term. And each time you receive feedback on these open book exercises, go back and clean up the exegesis. If you need to make some corrections or some adjustments, do that as you would have opportunity. Let's begin here then. I want to do a few of these with you. Colossians 1:2. Tois en Colossis, hagios kai pistois adelphois en Christo, charis humin. Humin, second person plural pronoun, but it's in the dative, and we think about the dative case here. I think the dative could be indirect object, and that's the most basic dative category, but we often want to think beyond just indirect object, the basic. I think this is a dative of advantage as well. This grace places the Colossians in an advantageous position. They are blessed by God with this grace. If we progress down to Colossians 1:8, speaking about Epaphras here, Chakai delosas hemin ten humon agapein en pneumati. He's the one making known to us, from delao, aorist active participle here, the one making known hemin to us, ten humon agapein en pneumati. The love, humon, your love. What kind of a genitive is this? Your love. Could be possessive, but remember, if the noun that the genitive is modifying has a verbal idea in it, agape, agapao, as a verbal idea, then that genitive is a subjective genitive. It can be thought of as the subject of the verbal idea in the noun it modifies. And I think that's the best way to take this. Your loving. He's made known to us your loving actions. And this would then be a point of contact with what we see in verse 4. The love which you have for all the saints. Colossians 1:9. Diatuta kai hemes aphes hemeros ekusamen u pauamatha hu perhumon prosukamenoi kai itumai. Because of this, we also, from the day we heard, we have not ceased praying and asking. What's the antecedent of tuta? Tuta here from hutas. What's the antecedent? Because of this. Well, it's all of what Paul has heard about the Colossians in verses 3 through 8. The antecedent is the robust paragraph of Colossians 1, 3 through 8. Note Harris's comments, and that will, I think, stimulate even further. Let's jump down to verse 17. A string here of autos, beginning in verse 17. Kai autos estin pro ponton, kai ta ponta an auto sunesteken. Kai autos estin he kephale, tu somatos tes ecclesias. Chas estin arche, protatikos ekton necron, hina genetai in passen autos protiuon. Notice that every time autos is used here, it is with a verb of being here in verse 17, number 10, number 11, and number 12 that you need to do. When we have autos as the subject with a verb of being, normally it can be an emphatic idea. I shouldn't say normally, but it can be an emphatic idea. And notice Kostenberger, Merkel, and Plummer's comments there. And I think in this context it is emphatic use of autos. He himself, and that's Paul's point in this great paragraph here that runs through verse 20. Let's move down to verse 22. And let's think about the antecedent here, number 13. Join me just here, verse 22. Nuni de apakat alox and entosomati te sarkos autu dia tu thanatu parastesai humas hagius kai amomus kai onik kletus katanopion autu. But now he has reconciled apakat elax and entosomati te sarkos. We'll think in module upcoming here in module 9 about prepositions, entosomati, in by means of his fleshly body through death to present you hagius amomus kai and ekletus katanopion autu before him. What's the antecedent of autu? Who's in view as the judge here, viewing the holiness, blamelessness, above reproachness of the Colossians? Who's done the reconciling? Yes, the antecedent here is the subject in apokate loxen, which is God. Come with me to verse 29. Escha kai kapio agonis amenas ktaten energion autu ten energumen en emoi en duname. Escha, for which also kapio I labor, agonis amenas ktaten energion autu. I labor, striving, katatain energin, according to the energy, the strength, the power, the working, his working. What kind of a genitive is autu? Well, again, we come back to it could be possessive, it's his working. And yet, we remember that the genitive that modifies a noun with a verbal idea in it can be a subjective genitive. His working, tein energumenein, that working that works in Paul, in power. Yeah, this is a subjective genitive. And what you see in verse 29 is this great combinative compatibility of exercise and work. Paul is laboring and God is laboring. And God's laboring enables Paul to labor. This beautiful cooperative effort. Let's move down to verse 8 here. Blepetemetis, see that no one may, see that no one, you, humas estai, no one would be a ha sulagogon, someone who would take you captive, dietes philosophios, through philosophy, and kenes apates, empty deceit, according to the traditions of men, kataten per ados and ton anthropon. See that no one would do that to you. Why, exegetical question, why use tis? Why an indefinite pronoun here? What does that accomplish in the logic of this paragraph? Tis is used here, the indefinite, I think, to make this idea just as bald and general as possible. Let absolutely no one, whoever it would be. This is a broad scope, impersonal in nature. It really heightens the sense of warning that's going on here. Well, continue to work through these and enjoy each of these pronouns. I trust that you will, and you're seeing already the exegetical weight of pronouns. Let's look at Colossians just a bit further. You'll notice in a bit when you get to chapter 4 there in your open book exercise that you'll be thinking about auta and its use as an intensifier, and that intensifying adjective here. Him I sent to you, in the epistolary aorist here of sending, I sent him to you, this way of using an aorist a past time, but though it's present at the moment as this person arrives with the correspondence. Him I sent to you for this very purpose, hina gnote, in order that you may know, ta, we come up to the next page, peri humon, that you may know the things concerning us, kai perikalese, and that he may comfort your hearts. Speaking here about Tychicus in verse 7, Paul has sent him for this very purpose, but let's do some text criticism here. In order that you may know, but if we go down to verse 8, and we look that there's a variant here in P46 and in Sinaiticus. These are important manuscripts as well as a number of others and the majority of manuscripts. In order that he may know the things concerning you. Gno there, an aorist subjunctive, third singular, he may know. You may look at that and say, was that perhaps a future idea, first singular, that I may know? No, gnosko in the future is deponent, so it ends in mu alpha iota, that my ending, and not omega, so this is a subjunctive, aorist subjunctive, third singular. He might know the things concerning you. That's the reading in P46, and Sinaiticus, it's been corrected, we'll see in a moment. The text in Vaticanus reads, in order that you may know the things concerning us. See Harris's comments here in this, but I want to just pull up for you so that you can see the way that this reads. Here we have Vaticanus. Let me jump back to the previous slide. Here there is verse 8, epempsa pros humas, eis auta, for this very, and now we have to go to the next leaf of the manuscript, tuta, for this very purpose. Here's this, and auta on the previous page, right here, this very purpose, in order that hina gnote, you may know, ta peri, the things, you may know the things, ta peri, he mon, the things concerning us. And here we have this prepositional phrase substantized with the ta in front of it, the things concerning us. But if we go back to P46, here we can notice eis auta tuta, for this very purpose, hina, right here, hina gno, that he may know, ta, right here, not gno te, but gno ta, the things concerning, and notice who, above the upsilon, we have the diacritical marks right here, separating the iota of peri from humon, in order that he may know the things concerning you. And that same reading likely has influenced Sinaiticus, or some way that reading is surfacing in both. And we can jump down here, hina, in order that, well, we can jump back up here, epempsa pros humas eis, here's our intensive adjective auta, tuta, for this very purpose, hina gno te. But notice how there has been a correction here, and likely multiple correctors. That's why if you look at your text critical apparatus, you see in the parentheses this is a second corrector and dates perhaps to the 7th century of these actual marks. The manuscript's much earlier, but someone came along knowing the reading that's represented also in P46 and crossed these out in order that you may know ta peri humon, or that he may know the things concerning whom, you. So we have a bit of confusion here in the readings. In order that you may know the things concerning you, no, there's a correction here that he may know the things concerning you. And Sinaiticus trying to make sense of the various possibilities. The text that is in NA 28 follows Vaticanus and seems to make the best sense. As Harris notes, this is the explanatory reading. It's most likely that genote, you may know the things concerning us, would give rise to the reading here in Sinaiticus and in P46. Let's do just a bit of vocab work here. Here you will work on the vocab in Chapter 12 this week, but you will not have a quiz over Chapter 12 for a couple of weeks. Again, Chapter 12 broken into 3 modules and 1 module per week, so you will not have this until the end of Module 10. That's when your quiz will be, but continue working on your vocab. Let me read just a few for you here. Entelemai. Entelemai, I command. Epangelemai, I announce or proclaim, similar to apangelemai. Eucharistia. Katalambano. This is an important word in persecution contexts, being seized or overtaken. Kleio, I shut or lock. Kleptes, a thief. Kleron amos, an heir, an inheritance. Ktizo, I create. Lestes, robber. Continue to work on your vocab each week and keep up. Again, when we have the Chapter 12 vocab quiz, it will include words from previous chapters, and your cumulative review will be especially helpful for you. Enjoy those pronouns. All the best to you.